All right. There we go. Welcome everybody here. I'm stoked to be able to bring this little conversation to you. I've got Levi Fontaine, friend, really good fencer. I'm sure most of you guys are aware of Levi, but if you're not, certainly I'll let Levi, um, be able to speak for himself. But welcome, buddy. Good to have you here.
Good to see you.
Yeah, so I guess why don't you tell everybody about Levi, a little bit about yourself, to kind of give people an idea of about you a little bit before we kick off.
Yeah, perfect. So I started fencing, it would have been around 2014 or 2000, early 2015. And I started with foil, and at that time it was dry foil. We weren't using right of way or anything like that. And it was really it's just really small club. It doesn't really exist anymore now. Um, but it was foil, and then I picked up small sword basically around the same time. I was very interested in the 18th century, especially like the first half of the 18th century. I was really into the Napoleonic stuff too, though. Like that whole sort of 1690 to 1812 sort of into swords. And I'd done as a kid before that, I'd done other martial arts. I had done Taekwondo. I did a little bit, so little that it almost doesn't count, but I did a little bit of Filipino stick fighting, and I did a little bit of Okinawan karate. But again, that was all brief. Taekwondo, I did that for a while, and that sort of got me, familiar with moving and, distance management. I started fencing. I found out pretty quickly I was really interested in the thrusting weapons. After probably the first 2 years, 2 or 3 years of fencing, uh, I was getting a little bored with the small sword, and I started taking interest in the rapier. And so at the time, I mean, HEMA's really sort of like probably around 2017 and 18 was when it started to just take off and become really like accessible knowledge wise. Before that, I remember like it was kind of hard to find resources sometimes if you were interested in something that was kind of niche. And so what I started with, initially was I started with Capoferro and Gigante. Those were the two that I started with, and those were fine. Like they all the information in them is good. It's not what's in them that's bad. It's just that they leave out a lot of things that, for me, they weren't a problem because I was already fencing. But for someone who doesn't fence and then they pick up that book, it's it's deceptive. It will sort of lie to you that once you've read the whole book, that now all of fencing, and that's really not how it works at all. So and around 2017 or 18 was also when I transitioned from studying under the with the first club that I was with, and again they hardly really exist anymore as far as I know. And then I started training under Chris Holtzman, and he's a very good resource for Italian fencing, really from 1600s well into present day basically. I mean, he's got all of that covered really well. But I started learning foil with him, and it was really like it really sort of came in and did away with a lot of the poor habits I had from previously and refined a lot of things. And is a very complete system because he essentially inherited it from his teacher, who learned it directly from Giorgio Santelli, who was a lot of you who are more into fencing probably have heard the name Santelli. He was very good,
Yeah,
very well known,
yeah.
and he brought that
Also
from Italy.
a household name in
Yeah,
the US. Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
for sure.
Yeah, and so from there, I continued also doing rapier. I've done little bits of saber on and off. It's never really been my thing, but I've learned the Radialian saber system over the years as well. Even got a chance to do some of that on horseback. And then I also spent several years doing traditional Japanese martial arts, which also included horseback training. So I've been very lucky. I've got to do a lot of things that a lot of people don't have access to at all. Has been very fortunate for me, and that's a big part of why been able to develop how I have over the years, because I've had consistency of training and quality of training,
Yeah,
thankfully.
that's huge.
So very lucky.
Huge.
Yeah.
So to back up a little bit to when you first got started, was there any movie or whatnot that kind of got you pumped about swords?
There was probably a few. Um, I was a I was a terminal Star Wars kid for a while when I was really young.
Right?
I think most people probably were at one point. I was really like the Pirates of the Caribbean series, like when I was, like a little, like 11, 12, 13-year-old. I thought that was the cool. I still
Yeah.
do. Um,
Fun movie.
and then a little later on, after I had already started fencing, what kind of got me more into it was I got into all the sort of 70s, 80s, and 90s, like the costume dramas that they would do. So stuff like Barry Lyndon, Rob Roy, Duelists. Uh, there's a Spanish movie, El Chiste. That one's really good. So there's a lot of like films that were they were very nice showcases of the sort of the period in the fencing I was into. And so um, that was a lot of the stuff early on that had me really interested in it. But also uh, like watching the Olympics, because I also practice modern sport fencing of foil and epee. I actually haven't done epee, and I've been on a long break from epee. I'm going to be returning to it probably pretty soon here because it's been too long. I still spend a lot of time getting foil training. So like the sport side of it too. Like I think for a lot of people will bring up movies, but I think there's more people than we realize that got into fencing just because they saw fencing itself. Because for me, like even though films were interesting, history was interesting, at the end of the day, like I was interested in fencing itself as a sport, like as an activity outside of just watching it on a screen.
Like historical sources or treatises that you would say like behind your fencing it's just like a driving force.
Yeah, for sure. So there's the living tradition part that comes from that can be traced back to the 1700s, even the 1600s. If you look at it very carefully, it gets messy there.
Mhm.
Any living tradition that claims a really direct line older than 1700s is probably making something up. Ours, we know it goes back, but we can't trace it quite. I don't think we can quite trace it from master to master back to Marcelli. But Marcelli is a big one for me when you get older than that. And then Latouche also for the small sword. I've really enjoyed that over the last couple of years. Those are probably two one other very big influences for me.
Uh,
Okay.
so yeah, you mentioned something about hit without be hit.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting because as historical fencing students, practitioners, chemists, whatever we want to call it, there seems to be in our community like many ways that we judge if you've been hit or not hit, and then hit after you've hit. And there's lots of conversation about that and how do we break that down, which then falls into rule sets, and of course at the tournament that I run, the tournament of defense, you've been a strong performer year after year at that competition. You know, I guess just for starters, what insights would you give people training wise to be successful in a system that is doesn't stop, right? It's nonstop, and then it focuses primarily on hit without be hit, and then landing effective hits with intent, right? And then there's additional criteria, much like other martial arts like boxing that base it off of your performance if there's a tie. So, I mean, what kind of advice would you give someone who is curious to try it out or come to the tournament, or it's year one that they're going to be trying this format?
I mean, so the first thing is obviously going to be fitness. I think it probably goes without saying. You
Everyone's
have to, well, you just have to be able to hang in there. You don't have to be an Olympian, but you just got to be in, you got to be in, if you can go to your club and for 2 hours you can do 5, 10, 15 minute, multiple, 5, 10, 15 minute bouts with your clubmates, and you can keep that up for, around 2 hours every time you go to your club, you're probably doing good enough to do it. Like, but anything less than that, it's just going to get difficult. Um, like that was for me, and it was a big change, at least for your tournament. I've done lots of other tournaments, so I already had the endurance for it, but it was very interesting with your tournament going from a rule set where it's one touch. Each fight is one touch. That was pretty easy for me because I could store up a lot of energy and focus on, each of those bouts.
Yeah.
Um, and now it's gone completely the opposite. It's 3 minutes, maybe 9 minutes, maybe 12 minutes for some of them. And I had never done one where the bouts for that long, but by the end of it, I was like, that wasn't that wasn't so bad, you know. It was so it's important to just keep up, I think especially the cardio, um, that's really important. That's and if you're like me right now, where my job involves a lot of sitting, like I noticed when I first started my current career, that started to dip a little bit, and I was like, okay, I got to get that back up, and I got it back up, and now I feel how I did, last November at the tournament again. And so it's just really important to maintain that. You'll notice it if you let it slip, for sure. Um, Beyond that, um, if you're going to hit and not be hit, you need to really, really train your brain to be very patient and very resilient. If you are bad under pressure, and I don't consider myself particularly good under pressure. It's not a skill that comes naturally to me at all. Um, what saves me is the training, because even if I'm kind of panicking, the training is still there, and it helps. But training your brain to think about what you're doing, think about your attacks, like don't waste attacks, because if you waste it and you don't land it, that's just the point for them. And that goes for any tournament, but especially one like this. If you know you're ahead of them, just do what you need to stay ahead of them, Don't try to overdo it, because you'll wear yourself out. I've seen this happen. I mean, yeah, it's nice if I beat someone 10-3, but if I beat them 10-9, I still beat them. And if I beat them 10-9 because I got just enough ahead of them and maintained that, so I didn't wear myself out, then that's good. So, um, yeah. So the way that you think about how you're how you're approaching, seeking points and seeking, a good score, like just don't overdo it. It's not worth it. Um, Sometimes you'll get a match where you can just drill them over and over and over. You can just hit them over and over and over. And sometimes you'll get a match where you get three on them and then it's getting really difficult. So you just stay at a distance and you say, I've got three. If I time this clock out and I've just got three and maybe he gets one in there, I still win. So, so knowing how to like read what your opponent's capable of and then, act accordingly is really important. And I think that's where I get into the next thing, is being very adaptable. And this again, everything I'm saying, I guess it goes for all tournaments, right? But um, this one kind of stresses these skills more, just because the fight's so long. You're in the ring with them until it's over. You're not just, it's not like, oh, I got 5 points on them really fast, I'm done. You know, um, so being adaptable, and what this comes from is having a really good mental command of fencing. Like you understand it really well. You don't subscribe fully to one very narrow way of doing things or one very other narrow way of doing things. Like I see a lot of people subscribe to what they'll refer to as a local meta in their fencing. We do tournaments this way here. This is how everyone here fences. And then if they go outside of their region, they start to have real problems. And it's normal to have problems at first when you're fencing someone you're not used to how they do it. But if you understand it as like a complete science or a complete skill set, like you know how to counter everything, then it's just a matter of adapting and you're fine. Because at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter what country or what state, what club they're coming from.
Hmm.
Like just parry what comes at you. don't let them touch you. You know, the all the swords, you know, the physics of how the swords interact doesn't change if you go from Oklahoma to Minnesota. It's not like everyone you're fencing there, suddenly their sword is gonna like phase through your sword, or they can tell it's. I hear a lot of people talk about this like it's a bigger deal than it is, you know, and what it really is just it's it's being very regulated and having a good command of all your actions and having a good library of them. We don't need to have, you know, 200 different techniques with special names. You just need to have your basics covered and practice them very consistently. And it's okay before a tournament to practice some weird specific things if you think you're going to deal with something that you don't normally deal with, but that should flow easily out of what your basics have already given you. So I know that's very long-winded, but it's very what I'm getting at is like just do fencing. Just do good effective fencing. Don't worry too much about gaming the rules because it doesn't it doesn't put enough emphasis on consistency.
That's interesting.
If that makes sense.
No, I mean, it makes total sense. You know, that brings me, that's really interesting you say gaming. Because, I mean, of course, as we've seen over the last several months since our last tournament, we've seen some pretty heated conversation in regards to the rule set,
Yeah.
to the tournament. And I heard this, and I was rather surprised about this. I mean, certainly I'd love to gain your feedback onto it. What do you have to say when people say that the rules are based more on style than effective hits?
I mean, that one,
I
I
just
can't
don't
help
know.
them on that one.
I know I don't understand it. That's why.
It's I mean, well, like what you said about like and I'll go back to an earlier point in a bit, but what I'll say about that is like if you just focus on hitting them and not getting hit, you don't need to worry about the rest of it. This is goes for a lot of rule sets. Now, you do need to have an awareness of what, you know, some rule sets will have a rule about the afterblow. You should be aware of that so you know that, you know, if you've landed a clean hit, you might still be in danger because the, you know, whatever the lockout time is, you know, we don't have electronics within HEMA, but you know, it's a similar thing. It's how long after you touch them can they still hit you and actually score? That's important to know, because that changes from rule set to rule set. There's things that matter for sure about the rule set or about the way it's being judged, but it's really absurd to substitute, you know, to substitute reliance on all of those systems for like how you fence. Like at the end of the day, you should still like because well, at least for me, what's gotten me the most consistent success is just as long as he doesn't touch me, as long as I don't let him hit me, you know, if I make sure he gets as little hits on me as possible, I will be fine. And that is generally what gets me further. Because if you don't let them get very many hits, all that time they spend not hitting you or getting parried is opportunities for you to then hit them. So
The,
that's
the,
a really simplified way of saying it, but
I agree. From to play on what you're saying, I guess like to add a little color to that would be if your intention is to hit, but you don't take into consideration defending yourself as you're hitting, like for example, like controlling the line, the sword, and
yeah,
you just hit, and your action is based off of just timing, just distance, without technique, you'll run the risk of number one, your hit might not be interpreted as effective because it might not be as clean a hit as it should be. So then there's subjectivity to the quality if it's a solid hit. And then secondly, if you don't if you don't apply some of these basic fundamentals of fencing, controlling the blade, the time, the measure all together, then you also run the risk of a doubly type of action where the encontre action comes into play, or some sort of afterblow that somewhat robs your touch of the thunder it deserves, if that makes sense. In the sense that you hit, but yeah, there was a hit to your arm. And maybe the judge then nullifies your hit because they saw a double. And you might not feel it because you're in the heat of the moment, you know? And I always give advice to my fencers is like attack conservatively, only attack when you know that you can successfully land an action where you can't be hit. And it
Yeah.
makes it much cleaner.
Yeah. That goes back to the patience, and that also goes back to what you were saying about, gaming the rules. So, I mean, if, for pretty much all, I don't think there's any HEMA tournaments that don't explicitly reward hitting and not being hit. Like that's across all of them. That's the main goal, generally speaking. Like
Mhm.
I can't think of any. And I haven't gone and competed in Europe yet, so I don't know what else there is. But from the way I've, seen, in videos over there, like generally that's always better. That's always better. Anything that happens, a touch from them that either negates both of your points or deducts from yours, or maybe gives them one when it could have otherwise just been yours, like it's not good. And recognizing when you can and can't attack, safely is really like like doubles are going to happen.
Yeah.
But you want them to happen because just it got weird and confusing. You don't want it to happen because someone just decided to not pay attention or get lazy and attack into a line that was closed or something,
Yeah.
or attack into a line that's open while they're not covering themselves. So now you have just the weapons go past each other. But back to gaming the rules. I think I don't think gaming the rules is necessarily a bad thing because every tournament's going to have rules that you want to stay within them as much as you can to win, right? But if the main rule is hit and don't get hit, well then guess how you game the rule? You hit and you don't get hit. That's every tournament rule set that I know of that I've ever been in.
Yeah.
The best way to game the rules is to hit and not get hit. Like if you really want to game the rules, get outside of them, get to where they're not a factor. And again,
Yeah.
it can't be perfect, but if you get to where the afterblow rule didn't affect you at all because you were never hit with an afterblow, and this is very idealistic. It happens. I'm not perfect, but I try to do it in that way because if I lower the standard and say it's okay if we double because I'm a little bit ahead, in epee that's okay, but it's a different game. In epee, that's correctly doing epee because that's gaming the rules. But in HEMA, we shouldn't want to encourage that, right? We shouldn't want to reward reckless fencing. And the other thing that you were saying when it comes to hitting and not being hit, like whatever you're gonna do, I would say just do it really well. Because if you're gonna play the game where you're very reserved and you're attacking from tempo, you're attacking in tempo, sorry, and you're not really harassing their blade much, but you do it very well and very clean, then that's excellent. And if you do that really well, it will be rewarded just as much as if you do something that's very blade forward, very sort of controlling. But that's a simplification, but what people mistake is they think this is about style, like you're saying. It's not in the slightest. It's about hitting and not being hit, and it does not matter what methodology you bring to it. If that's what the outcome of it is, it's good enough for sure. I mean, I was in a finals match. I was in several matches with some very good fencers from overseas, and there's definitely some commonalities between how we fence. But we we had notably different styles, but we weren't doubling a whole lot because at the end of the day, the objective was the same. So I kind of ran in circles around that question, and you can edit some of that out if you want. But uh, when it comes to them judging it on style, I just don't believe that. I don't see that. I understand how like if somebody glazes over the rules, they can kind of misinterpret that, but I didn't see it. What I see is, it doesn't matter what your style is. If your style is Spanish, Italian, black tigers, modern sport fencing, as long as your hit and don't get hit, it's very good, and you'll get far with it.
Yeah. Or even if it's your own style, because there's
Yeah.
people I interviewed a gentleman, Bo Holgan, really good fencer out of Austin, and he was like, "Well, I really don't. I'd have modern Olympic fencing experience, but I've somewhat just developed my own way to approach this from just studying various martial arts." And I was like, "Dude, that's awesome. I mean, everyone has a different way." And he would never be penalized because he's not doing Marcelli or Fabris because it has nothing to do with style. It just has to do with hit without being hit,
Yeah.
you know?
And if
Um,
you do it, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. I was going to say, I wonder, sometimes I wonder what it might be with some of the feelings that we've seen. If it's somewhat of a different, it's just a change in the sense where rather than having guys raising flags and stopping actions, right, for people to process the
Hmm.
touch a bit, rather than it's non-stop like boxing, very similar to boxing, and scored
Yeah.
very similar to boxing. I'm wondering if I think sometimes it just takes time people a little bit of time to understand that they're being judged on this rather than it being like fencing where they've got their electronic box and the score is being tallied in real time. You
Yeah.
know, but many other martial arts just don't do it that way. And they do it by being judged by your peers or accredited judges.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the important thing is just, and I can only talk from my experience.
Yeah.
What I see in the, at least in the Italian rule set, my bias is being what they are, but also I've been fencing for a long time, and what I saw in it, looking at it critically, because I didn't go into it just already with rose tinted glasses. I went into it saying, okay, I'm curious to see how this is,
Well, you
and
also
I,
attended the training class
yes, that was
that
fun.
I gave before the tournament to willing people and
Yeah,
you come to judging seminars to yeah.
yes, and well, and they're fun, but it's also like it's a fun system to fence, you know.
Yeah.
Um, it's if you keep your cardio up, it's a fun system to fence in. It doesn't put it's a different kind of stress, but it doesn't put I don't think it puts as acute of a stress on you as like shorter bouts. And I think there's positives and negatives to that. Like I think that people should do different formats of tournaments. Like they should go and
Yeah.
compete under different formats. Because if you go compete in uh a tournament that's like a rapier tournament that's run kind of like an epee tournament. So you fence, you fence, you fence. The moment there's a hit, it stops. You go back, and you go back and fence more. That's a different mental and physical drain on you than one where you are doing basically like a free sparring session for 3 minutes, 9 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. Like it could be 12 minutes if it goes into
Yeah.
overtime when you get towards the end. And you learn um, how to treat these different formats, and it's really helpful. And it's a learning process, and you'll lose bouts, and it'll be really irritating. And sometimes you'll feel maybe the judge messed up, or sometimes you say, "Oh, I how did I screw that up?" But what it is it's just you're going around, and you're learning, and you're processing
Yeah.
different formats, and eventually you get used to it, and it just they all just feel familiar. You know, so yeah, it's I think that it's a good rule set. I think that my experience was good, at least.
Yeah. I think I'll be interviewing. I saw they did it. They did a demo up in Canada with
Hmm.
Marco Vulcan and Jay Moss, two really good fencers that you and I have both fenced. Marco and I fenced Jay when I went and taught a class up in Canada. And I noticed when I fenced Marco, we had almost zero doubles because we both had a very similar kind of mindset on the bout. And then the one round we have of you recorded, you guys, I mean, there was a lot more time spent in the discovery in that first round, probing and trying to set up very clean actions. Um, I think with the system, I've seen it to be not only is it a nice little competitive tool, but it's also a cool training environment as well for people to be able, new to advanced people, to work within an environment and really teach themselves how to apply the fundamentals and learn how to attack without being hit.
Yeah, it's if approached correctly, it is. We have seen. I do remember seeing one time. I think the first time that it was tried.
Pilot. Yeah.
Some people thought of it as continuous fencing, and that it's like, yeah, we're just gonna go in and just start smacking each other over and
Yeah.
over and over, and it's like,
Not
no,
good.
no. But I think most people like did pretty good when we brought it into the mainstream for single
Yeah.
rapier. I
I
think
thought so.
I didn't see. I mean, it's a learning curve. I had instances where I doubled a few times in a row, and I like, why did I do that? I could have avoided that, because
Yeah.
it's a learning curve to do something where because when I do free fencing most of the time, like when it's just training, it's friendly training. Normally, when the touch is landed, we'll back up a little bit and then go back in. Now I don't necessarily, I can't stand 30 minutes of, or not 30 minutes, exaggerating, but I can't stand like long discussions between the touches about what happened. No, I do want to just keep going. So for me,
Yeah.
like this was fairly easy to get into because it's like, okay, I'm already used to just fence, get the touch, move back, fence, get the touch, move back.
Yeah.
I think, I don't like the whole let's talk about what happened. If someone was hit, okay, next exchange, talk about it afterwards. But what I like about this one is you're not supposed to self-call. You just focus on what you're doing, and there's people watching. And
You kind of look at the
um,
self-call happens by when you get hit by an effective hit, you take a break. You
yeah,
break the action and start back in. Because I remember some people were like, oh, I like to self-call. And I'm like, well, then just take a step back. That's you basically acknowledging to everyone you were hit. And so you are kind of self-calling a little bit. And it was cool to watch the bout in Canada that happened over last weekend. You saw some pretty cool, clean fencing. Do
because
you
it's
think,
sometimes you gotta, yeah,
do you think that some of the feelings or conversations that we hear, feedback wise, do you think some of it has to do with the HEMA sport or environment evolving and that there's some different routes being taken? I think that the sport's evolving maybe, and we have different mindsets, and there's no right or wrong way to train or just to enjoy the sport, right? Just enjoy it. That's number one criteria. That's awesome.
yeah,
Get
yeah,
out there and move, right? But I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, just as maybe the community as a whole.
yeah. It's it's getting more popular. I mean, like I said, what I remember around 2017. I just remember you just see more and more and more of it online, and it's gotten to the point now where there's a lot of. I'm not a very online person. I don't project a very
Yeah.
big online presence. That's not my thing. But I watch. I see things. Um, and it's gotten popular enough now, and it's got popular enough with people in their late teens and 20s, like I'm 24, that it's sort of starting to take on a life of its own. You're starting to have more people who are athletic enough and skilled enough that you're starting to get very strong opinions, and you're starting to get strong opinions that are held by more people. It's not like it used to be where you would have a few people who were really good around the world and they all had their own very strong opinions. Now it's like a lot of people are really, and that's a normal thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's still maturing. But what I've noticed is geographically, uh, there's some separation maybe in how people look at fencing, for sure. And also like there seems to be a real uh, like predictable. sort of set of priorities that a fencer will have based also on like, what time period or weapon that they mainly study too. Like there's really sort of each sort of like weapon or sort of approach kind of has its own culture at this point. Um,
Yeah.
and like I mean, it's easy for everyone to go, oh well, screw those people, I'm over here. But it's kind of just like, who cares? Like if people are having fun and moving around and stuff, it's great. I don't care
Yeah.
what style people do. I'm
Yeah.
just going to do mine. I'm going to do my thing.
There's that
If
word
I'm
style again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if I'm not, see, I mean, I'm someone, I don't care about Messer or Longsword or it's sword, but like, I'm not, but if people like those, great, great. It's not my thing, but go do them. And I like to see people do it. Well, I like to watch Longsword when it's done really well. It looks really
Oh
good when it's
yeah,
done
for
well.
sure.
It's not
For
my,
sure.
like, I don't do it. I've tried it a couple of times. Or sword and buckler. I've seen some really impressive sword and buckler out of Northern Italy.
Yeah.
Um, like really cool looking. You
I
know,
like our friend, our mutual friend, Luca for his rapier dagger. That dude's a ball.
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
a super nice
In
guy.
Northern Italy. Yeah.
Yeah, super nice guy, super responsive, and not like totally just wants the sport to grow and positive vibes. I mean, I remember one time when I was starting Rapier Dagger a little over a year ago, I wrote him and then he films me a video and I was like, you rock.
Yes.
But I mean, super cool. That anyone that's ever in Venice, go check that guy's school out, man. Freaking rad guy. Plug some other tournaments, man. What other tournaments do you like to go to? Because I think it's important that that we all kind of come together a little bit because we can all help each other in growing the community.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've never even really been a tournament guy, but I've found that they're pretty important if you want to pressure test what you're doing. So ones that I've really liked, I mean, I think AFO, the tournament defense, is probably my favorite. And that's not like that. That's the reason for that is probably just the crowd of people that it draws. It really draws a pretty serious rapier crowd, so it feels like you're actually competing in rapier. In a lot of other tournaments, rapier ends up feeling more like saber or something like that. You know, in this one, you really get a lot of people that are more serious about it. I've Other than that, really, I go to some local ones. I've been to Casella Affection a couple times. I've been to Donnybrook a couple times. I mean, there can be inconsistencies with tournaments sometimes. Like sometimes you'll go and do great, sometimes you'll go and do terrible. And for me, normally it's a fun time when I go to these events because I do a lot of free sparring and stuff. Uh, and so like those are ones I go to compete, but mostly to see people. But for me, I think the main one and the one that I train the most for is definitely AFO because especially it's at the kind of at the end of the year as well.
yeah.
Really, I haven't made it to very many other ones yet. I haven't got a chance yet. But I'd like to. It'd be interesting.
Yeah. That's interesting, and my guys love going. My team likes going to Gesellenfechten as well. Seems like they have a lot of fun, a lot of fencers, and there's some really nice little rapier tournaments starting to pop up here in Austin, in Austin, Houston, Dallas. So we're starting to become a little scene. I know when I started AFO, like in I think 2018 or whatever, there was no rapier at all. Like not much. I mean, it was always secondary, like you're talking about. And so now there's starting to be an emphasis on it, which is really cool. And we're really trying to push small sword and some of these other weapons and also like a women's event at our tournament. I think it'd be cool to I think it'd be nice to have a women's event and let them go head to head as well, rather than just an open.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that we have some guys going out to Combat Con this weekend and we'll see some of our friends out there. And but I think competition is really important. But at the same time, I think with being in HEMA, it's kind of cool because you know, competition is only one element of it.
Yeah.
There's the academic side. So we've got people like our friend Ernesto. I don't know about you, but have you ever contacted Ernesto and gone, "Hey, what does page 32 have to say of said treatise?" And then he'll come back, "Oh, that's like
Yeah,
without breaking a moment, he'll be like, "Oh yeah, that was blah blah blah." It's amazing. And I appreciate that aspect of it, because there's people out there that you can literally name the book or a phrase and they're going to tell you the page number. And
yeah,
we need people like that in our community to
yeah,
dig deeper. And I think it's awesome. I love the sparring element of HEMA. In modern fencing, you get it, but it's not as organic in a way. Like, just sparring footage is fun to study too, because you can see people acting a little looser, trying different actions out that maybe they're not so comfortable with. And that's all in this hobby. I mean, this sport is all about the spar. I mean, it's awesome. I find that to be pretty exciting, and you can get a lot better going sparring bout after sparring bout. So
definitely.
yeah, if you had to give advice to someone new starting in HEMA, what would it be?
Um, don't be in a rush to settle on one thing. I would just say like take time, find what you're really interested in, and then do cross training or do other things that can help you get as good as that as you can. Training in Olympic fencing will help with almost any weapon that you're going to do. The other thing I would say is like still like do what you're interested in. Don't feel like a lot of people just feel pressured to do longsword. If you like it, yeah, but you don't have to. You don't or you don't have to do rapier. You can do whichever one you want, and but do it well. Like commit now to the fitness, to the technical side of it, to the cross training. Commit now, and you're gonna feel, it's gonna be rough at first because you're gonna try things and you're just gonna get hit every time. You're not gonna know what the heck is going on, and then you're gonna get 4 years in, and you're gonna go, "Oh, this all feels way easier,"
Yeah.
all of a sudden. And then you're gonna get 5 years, and then you're gonna get 10 years in, and you're gonna be like, you could be one of the best in the country if you just really stay consistent. So
Yep.
yeah,
That's awesome, man. Thanks so much. And thanks for taking the time, Levi. And
yeah,
certainly look forward to connecting with you here soon and crossing some swords. And yeah, it should be good time. So thanks, man. I appreciate it.
for sure. You have a good one.